Well, hello. Thanks for joining me. This is Christina Smeckens with Smeckens Education, and we're thrilled to have you join us for this 1 hour webinar on the 3 test preps power strategies. Let me do some quick logistics before we just dive right in. First, we are recording this so that, of course, you can rewatch it, but also for anybody who couldn't join the live version can catch it on a recorded version. So you'll get an email within about 24 hours that will give you access to the link where this video will be posted. All right, second quick logistic, there is a handout that goes with this webinar, and you can access that now in the handout section on your screen. It's 8 pages, and you'll see the same content in the slides as I'm going through them, but I just condensed it into a handout PDF that's a little bit shorter than my PowerPoint. And our third point is that there are 3 power strategies, and after each one, about 20 minutes each, I will pause before going on to the next one, and I will see if there are any questions. There's the questions box there. If you have some specific questions that relate to what I was talking about, feel free to type those in. I'll pause, take a peek at those, answer as many as we have time for, and know this, that if I don't address your particular question, that I will follow up via email in the next day or two. So you'll get an answer, but maybe not during this live webinar. All right, I think we're ready to get started. And I want to start with this whole notion of the title of this, and that I'm a little bit, I don't really love that we call this 3 test prep power strategies, because I struggle a little bit with that term test prep. Like, if you come to this webinar and you listen to these 3 strategies, you'll have the magic pill, do X, Y, and Z, and your kids will pass. I think it's so much bigger than that. In fact, what I want to talk about in this webinar goes way beyond test prep. I think what we're talking about are 3 powerful strategies that the test will assess. They're looking for these, but it's more than just a one-day assessment. This is college, this is career, this is real world skills. The kids will be more successful in their jobs. They'll be more successful as communicators, as thinkers. So as we look through this, I call it test prep, but I call it test prep because that sells. And I know that's what you want. That's flashy, and that's what we're thinking about. But please know, we're not preparing kids for a test. We're preparing them for life. Okay, I'll get off my soapbox now. Let's jump in and identify what are the 3 power strategies we're going to learn and what makes them so powerful. We're going to start with this idea of making inferences. We have to be able to do that in order to then write strong constructed responses. That'll be our second power strategy. And then the third one will be to talk about this big research writing task that a lot of us have been hearing about and are a little nervous as to whether or not kids can be ready for this and pull this off. I believe these 3 strategies are powerful because they either carry a lot of weight, they come up a lot in the test, or they impact so many different questions. So that's why I chose these 3 to really narrow down and target in our 60 minutes. All right, so let's dive into that first one. Making inferences about complex text, making inferences about simple text. Let's start there. Just this idea of making inferences. Okay, so what are we talking about in terms of an inference? I think we need to back up the bus, and before I start giving you strategies to teach, let's just make sure we understand what an inference is. There are different kinds of questions. There are literal questions and there are inferential questions, okay? Now, standardized tests use very few literal, if any, questions. A literal question is where you will actually go into the text and find the answer. It's a who did this, a what, a when, a where, and you literally, explicitly can touch the actual answer in the reading passage. All right, here's the thing. Standardized tests nowadays do not ask these kinds of questions. They are asking questions about what the author implied in the passage. They didn't come right out and say it, but they gave you clues, and you have to read between the lines, or what we call infer. You know what? The more implied information, the more complex the text is. The more inferences kids have to make, the more complex the text is. Our kids are hoping for the literal question. The problem is the bulk of these questions are inferential questions. So they have to be able to make an inference. We're not going to see many of those simple little dinky questions. Okay, now, if you're having a flashback right now to something you learned about several years ago in a PD called QAR, question-answer relationship, yeah, that should be striking a chord right now, because there are different types of literal and inferential questions. In particular, there are right there questions where you can find the answer, or think and search, where the answer is there, but it's in several different places. Again, standardized tests don't ask these kinds of questions anymore. They're asking them for author and me questions. They're asking kids to think beyond what the text says literally or explicitly and figure out what the author implied. Okay, so when we look at these kinds of inferential questions, examples would be, what is the author's perspective? What's the main idea of the passage? How does the author describe the character in the story? These are questions that need answers, but they're not literally going to be answered in the text. Nowhere in there does the author say, the main idea of this passage is. He doesn't just come out and say it. The other big difference between tests then and now is kids don't only have to give the answer, the inference. They also have to tell how they know their answer is right, which is why so many times questions on these standardized tests have a second statement. They have a provide the evidence. They have a support your answer. They have use details from the text to back it up. Standardized tests nowadays are referred to as next generation assessments. And part of what makes them complex, in addition to a variety of things, is that they're basically inferential questions, and kids have to be able to give the answer, the inference, and demonstrate how they know. We need to make sure we're teaching our kids to provide these kinds of two-part answers. We're going to see them everywhere. They got to have an answer with evidence. That's the part A. What do you sentence best describes the main idea of the passage? Part B, which sentences support your choice from part A? We see these in the constructed responses, the extended responses. We see these when kids have to be able to kind of make their claim or state their answer, their inference, and back it up with evidence. But again, this isn't just the test, you guys. This is real world. How many times are we talking to somebody and they claim something, they say something, they give their opinion, they make an inference. What do you think? And we are continuing to talk, and then they tell us why they think it, or we ask, why do you think that? How do you know that? What's your proof for that? This is real world. This isn't just academic school test prep kinds of things. This is huge. This concept of making an inference needs to be taught. We can't just define what an inference is. We can't just say, well, you put clues together, you put them together, and boom, you have an inference. Whoa, we got to break this down. How do we break this down? I do it in 5 explicit steps. And the first 2 are kind of no duh. All right, you can't make an inference if you didn't first read the passage, view the text, watch the video, whatever it is. And of course, read the question or the prompt. What is it you want me to make an inference about? Okay, now we start to get into tricky. In order to answer that question using the text, we have to list the relevant details, the details from the text that might be helpful. Okay, let's back up. First, we have to define relevant. Relevant details to the question. If the question is asking about setting, then any details in the passage about weather or season or mood or a geographic location, that is going to be relevant. If we're asking about character information, then actions, reactions, what they say, what they do, how they feel, that's relevant. We have to make sure kids understand what is relevant to that particular question. And then when we say collect the relevant details, we mean literally the actual words and phrases from the passage. What are the words and phrases that might help us answer this question? So first we read, we look at the question, and then we go after the details stated in the text that might lead us to the answer. Remember, the answer isn't in there. We're not going to find the answer, but we're going to get these clues and put them together. How do you put them together? Well, you don't just go from a list of details to bam, here's the answer. It doesn't work like that. It's not magic. It's hard. It's a process. It takes thinking and background knowledge. They start to take these clues and they look at them and they put them together and they make these little baby steps or mini inferences. And this makes me think this. It makes me, oh, I get it. Step 5 is I figure out what it all means. I can answer the question. I made the inference. Okay, I've been teaching these 5 steps. I've been modeling these 5 steps for years. I've been working on this, and I think I'm making a difference, but I'm telling you, the secret to these 5 steps was when I found this silhouette by Roz Linder in her book, Chart Sense. This combination, this is the magic, because the silhouette offers a concrete, visible way to execute the 5 steps. It allows kids to kind of track their thinking. It allows me to take what's invisible and make it visible. We see steps 3, 4, and 5 all appear on the silhouette. Let me give you an example. Let's just look at this fake passage here. All right, so we have to read whatever. And then there's some question, an inferential question. All right, well, now the first thing I want to do after reading the question or the prompt is get my silhouette out. Literally, I would get out my handout, just the silhouette, just draw it. And I need to think, step 3, of the relevant details from the passage relevant to the question that might help me answer this question. Now, we could annotate the text, highlight, underline, but when I'm first teaching this, I want them to actually put them on the outside of the silhouette. We're literally going to make a list of the details. So here we go. Whatever the question is, I'm pulling actual details from the text, details that are relevant to the question. Then I put a couple together and I think, when this happens, so does this. It makes me think this, mini inference. Then I move this and this and this together and I say, well, that kind of reminds me of mini inference. And this, well, they go together when mini inference. Then I think about those 3 mini inferences together. This and this and this. I'm thinking the answer must be bam. And here comes my inference. Don't make this look easy. And it's kind of squishy. Nobody feels confident in step 4. Everybody's kind of, well, I'm thinking maybe. Step 4 were those mini inferences, those baby steps. Then I feel better putting my baby steps together when I give you my step 5. That's how you teach kids to make an inference. How do you figure out the author's perspective? That's an inference. Put the clues together. What do they mean? How do you figure out the main idea of the passage? Put the clues together, figure out what they mean. How do you figure out the theme of a passage? Put the relevant details that will help you with theme together to come up with the inference. Inferring needs to be taught explicitly, these 5 steps. And this isn't for a test, you guys, this is real world. We do this all the time. We do these 5 steps explicitly in seconds. We do it so fast, we just automatically do it when the text is easy and the question is easy. Let me show you. Some kid comes into the room and the kid's arms are crossed and she's slamming the doors and she's dropping her books and she's grunting and that's the passage, visual text, all right? And the question, well, I'm thinking, what's wrong? Well, I don't even have to ask. I know how she's feeling. I know. How do I know? Step 3, make a list of the details. She grunted, she crossed her arms, she slammed the door, she has a scowl on her face, she dropped her books. And then I start to move these together and I'm thinking, slam the door, she's kind of being aggressive right now. And she crossed her arms and her scowl, her body language is telling me something. And she's making noise when she drops those books. She's seeking attention. When you put that together, she's mad. I bring my background knowledge into it to help come up with this, aha, she's mad. She never said she was mad, but I put the clues together. I made an inference. I do this with visual text. I absolutely would point out we do this all the time. And it's super easy when the text is easy. It's super easy when the question is easy. But what if the question was, compare the unifying themes of these two passages. What do you notice in common about both? Well, first of all, I have to know the theme of one, the theme of the other, be able to come, that's complex. That's why I like these 5 steps. That's why I love Rosalinder's Silhouette, because it takes this very invisible and abstract concept and gives it to me concretely and visibly in 5 steps. Teach the 5 steps and do it regularly in class. You know where you could do this a lot? You could do this in your class discussions. You're reading a passage, you're going to ask a question anyway, an inferential question about the passage anyway in our whole class conversation. And in the process, slow down. Slow down. We tend to make a mistake here. We're reading, we stop, we ask a question. That's steps 1 and 2. And what am I looking for? The answer. What am I looking for right now? The inference. So how do you think played out? What's the significance of so-so? What's the perspective of so? I'm asking for an answer, and these kids are like, eh? They can't answer it. Oh, ask the question, but make it rhetorical. Don't really look for an answer, because you know who's going to answer? The same 3 kids who always answer. Everybody else is going to stop making eye contact with you because they don't know. Why? Because you didn't allow for steps 3 and 4. Ask the question, but make it rhetorical. Then push these kids to make a list of details relevant to the question I just asked. Go back in the passage. Make a list of details. Start to put them together. What do you now know? How do you know that? That leads you to the answer. We got to slow down the bus. I think in class, we're asking for inferences before they've had a chance to add up the details. So power strategy 1 was all about making an inference, putting it together. This is going to affect every question on the standardized assessments, because they're not easy literal. They're hard. They're inferential. They got to think beyond the text. And so that said, I think this is a power strategy because it is so prevalent in all of the parts of the test. Okay, let's pause here, and I'm going to take a peek at our questions and see should we have any right now. I was looking for a picture to illustrate inference. Yes, Laura, that would be awesome. Take a peek at our time here. I've got just a minute. Let me answer this question because this is a good one. And if I can figure out how to blow up my screen for a second, or myself. Let's see if I can make myself bigger. I can't figure it out. So I'll just talk you through it and then we'll keep going. Okay, here's a second question that just popped up. Christina, would you use visuals? Yes. In fact, here's a mistake we sometimes make. We want to teach the 5 steps with easy text. I know everybody knows she's mad. They're going to do 1, 2, 5. The problem is that they're not going to learn how to do steps 3 and 4 with easy text, so they're definitely not going to be able to do it with hard text. So yeah, I absolutely would use photos. Show them a picture and ask them simple questions about it. This is great for ELL. This is great for special ed. This is great for primary. Any struggling reader. Ask a question that is not obvious in the picture. It doesn't say it. It's not right there. You can't touch the answer, but it's putting things together in order to answer that question. What's going on? How does she feel? Where are they? Those kinds of questions. I would do it with photos. That's a great idea. It's visual text. We're teaching them how to do this. Huge. Then, when the 5 steps, step 3, collecting details. Step 4, making mini inferences. Step 5, bam, this is what I think it means, inference. When the steps become more familiar, then switch to print text, then switch to more complex text and more complex questions as well. Great question. Yes, I absolutely would start working on the 5 steps to inferring with Rosalinder Silhouette using visuals. Okay, we're going to move the bus along here and take a peek now at our second strategy. All right, so power strategy 1, make inferences. Power strategy 2, they have to be able to generate strong constructed responses. Okay, here's what we have to understand about the constructed responses, you guys. Our kids are assessed in their reading comprehension through writing. They have to be able to articulate their thinking, their inference and their evidence in writing. So first they have to be able to make an inference. Then they have to be able to write about their inference. Power strategy 2 comes after power strategy 1 on purpose. So what are they looking for in a constructed response? Well, they're looking for the answer, the inference. You know, what's not stated in the text, but we asked you about and we wanted you to think beyond the text. Can you tell us in a sentence what the answer is? And of course, can you support it with evidence, details from the text? But there's another facet to the constructed response we have got to get our kids to figure out, and it's huge when we go to the long extended writing prompts. It's the explanation sentence. It's the sentence that kind of connects, how did you get from this answer with this evidence? What's the connection? Can you explain your thinking? Those are the 3 facets of a well-written constructed response. And for a lot of us at our school to help kids with this very complex task, we give them a formula, you know, like yes ma'am, or race, or ace, or rap, or something like that. And we say, all right, we're going to give you this formula because it's going to help you remember the parts. You've got to restate part of the question and give your answer. You got to have your evidence, multiple pieces of evidence, and we got to have an explanation. And so we tend to give them a formula. Now, let me do a little side note on formulas here. I'm not a fan of formulaic writing either. And it really has very limited place in our everyday writing classroom. However, on constructed responses, it's perfect. It's perfect. This isn't like creative writing with a great hook. This is academic writing. They've got to present a lot of information in a small amount of space with limited time. And what a formula does is help ensure all the parts are there, it's organized, and it's well written. I think formulas are huge. The key would be to have a formula and teach your kids the part of it. Remember, these are inferential questions. Constructed responses require kids to think beyond what the text says and support their inference with answers. I'm taking you back to QAR for a minute. These are author and me questions. The question is going to require an answer that is partly from me and my thinking and partly from the author. They're author and me questions. Okay, now watch this. The author and me, those parts are in the response. The first part of your constructed response comes from your thinking, not the text. Me and my thinking. All right, I need to restate the question and tell them what I'm thinking the answer is. I'm thinking she's mad. According to the picture, using the watching the girl come into the classroom, I think she's mad. Boom. Didn't say that in the visual text. I just offered it. That's me and my thinking. Now I go on to author details. Support your answer with evidence. Her face was scowled and her arms were crossed. Another detail from the text, visual text, the photo, was she stomped her foot and she dropped her books, or she grunted and she did this. From the video, from the text, from the passage, you know, those sentence starters we use, according to the passage, one detail from the reading. Those are great. That's where they fit. 2 A's, 2 author details. Me and my thinking, author proof, author proof. Then the final sentence has to be me and my thinking again. Back to the inference. I have to explain what the connection is between my inference and the author details. That's me bringing something to the table here. I just did it. I just did what they're looking for in a constructed response. I'm using author and me. And if you've been teaching your kids, yes, ma'am, there it is. Yes, ma'am is this idea of when the test lady gives you a constructed response question, you answer, yes, ma'am, M-A-A-M. You give her the parts that she wants. Yes, ma'am isn't my baby. I didn't come up with this. In fact, I was at a school, Braco Day Elementary in Whiteland, Indiana, several years ago, sharing with the staff who knew a lot about QAR, and we're trying to improve students' constructed responses that, all right, it's a combination of author and me sentences. And it was during that training, that teacher, Sarah Ambler, kind of had this, so it's an M-A-A-M, it's a ma'am. It's the test lady. Sarah Ambler's the one that came up with yes, ma'am. She's given us permission to use it. I love it. I love the formula because it says include all these parts, but you don't have to use yes, ma'am. You can use any formula you want that ensures you're going to get all those parts. Some people are using RACE, like restate part of the question and give your answer. Cite the evidence from the author. Explain your thinking. Others use a shorter version, ACE. Give the answer, cite the evidence, explain your thinking. The formula is huge in a constructed response. It doesn't fit everywhere, but this type of unique academic writing, it has a place. All right, I want you to notice, as we're getting ready to move on here, the color. The color is very intentional. The me and my thinking, the inference parts of a constructed response, I put in orange on purpose. The author evidence parts, I put in green on purpose. I want you to see the combination of my thinking, my elaboration, me going beyond the text, and author support. There's orange, green, orange. Okay, so now watch. I started with orange in my constructed response. Remember back here? I started with orange, the inference. The first sentence I write is my answer or my inference. Watch. But as a reader, I don't come up with the answer first. As a reader, I list details. And I come up with it. But as a writer, it's opposite. We first present the answer, and then we follow it with support. You see, it's backwards. That's why we always ask, so who can answer this question? Because we're thinking like the constructed responses, but we have to honor that as a reader. First, they have to kind of dig in and think about it, and all those details lead us to the inference. But when you write, you present the answer and support it with the details that were most helpful. It's reciprocal. It's a flip-flop. There's a reader process to make an inference, and then there's a writer process to share the inference in a constructed response. Okay, so we're going to provide the inference, give the answer. Yes, that's my M and yes, ma'am. I'm going to give my evidence, my author details. Those are my A's. We've got that. Okay, I have yet to really reinforce this last sentence, and this is big. It's even bigger and more important when we get to the extended response here in Power Strategy 3. But let's tackle it in a short constructed response. Right now, we do not have yes, ma'am. We have yes, ma'am. We do not have race. We have rack. We don't have the E. We don't have the M. We're not done yet. Okay, this extra sentence is vital because on the rubrics, the writing rubrics that go with assessments, they're looking for a balance between evidence and elaboration from the kids. Okay, I put those in green and orange on purpose. Evidence is author details. Elaboration is reader thinking. Elaborate, go beyond the text, infer. Well, if you look right now, I have done the inference with the evidence, but one sentence is me and my thinking, and two sentences are author details. 2/3 so far are evidence, and what the rubric is wanting is more thinking from the students. They're looking for more elaboration. That's why the M and the E, yes ma'am, race, is so vital. We can't just put it out there. We have to then elaborate on our thinking and explain what we mean. This is huge. We need that balance of evidence and elaboration. Too much author evidence? Nope. Then you're just regurgitating. You're just summarizing. You're not really synthesizing. Too much off on your own thinking, not enough support? Yeah, that's not good either. We need a balance of green and orange. Are you seeing a potential here for color coding student responses when you're working on constructed responses? Have them change the sentence colors, use different color pens, different color fonts, do something to really emphasize this balance. Okay, so let's talk about this fourth sentence. How do you get it? Because I know we've been working on it. We have been desperately trying to get them to write the final explanation sentence. I'm using our she's mad example again. And we're getting things like she is mad. These details prove she is mad. That's what they say. These details prove she is mad. Well, that's not really elaboration. We're not going beyond the text. We're definitely not explaining, we're repeating. How do you do this? The secret's in the middle of the silhouette. Literally in the middle of the silhouette head, there's what you need to write a well-written explanation. Explanations. That final sentence has 3 parts. We're doing pretty good on the first one. Restate the answer. These details prove she is mad. Yeah, we're good on that. But then we have to connect our answer to the explanation, to the, how do you know? Why do you think they prove it? What do you mean they prove it? How do they prove it? All right, so let's put these 3 parts together. In one sentence, we need to restate, connect, and explain. Here we go. These details prove she is mad. Okay, I've said nothing new yet. I've only restated my answer. Now I want to connect. I want to connect my answer to the details that got me there. I need a connecting word. You know what kids' favorite connecting word is? Because. This is where because lives. In the last sentence, not the first sentence, the last sentence. These details prove she's mad because, and now I want to use those mini inferences, those baby steps. Ooh. Remember what the explanation is. Explain how these details got you here. How did these details, what's the journey of your thinking? I'll tell you what the journey of my thinking was. These little baby steps, then put it in the explanation. These details prove that she's mad because her aggressive actions and her body language are consistent with someone who's upset. Man, you just sound smart. This is huge, you guys. This sentence, it's pretty important. Not so much for the constructive response, although it's called a concluding statement and it's just a well-written paragraph, but they will be vital in an extended response. We need more explanation. We need more elaboration in teaching kids how to put, what are you thinking? Connect it. Why are you thinking that? Explanation. Putting those 3 parts together in a single sentence, this is going to be our bread and butter of better writing. We need that explanation. All right, now, as we wrap up this second strategy of constructive response, and before I take your questions, I want to point out something pretty powerful about Rosalinder's silhouette. Everything you need to write a constructive response lives on the silhouette. Everything. If you're using the RACE formula, there, she's mad, restate, and give your answer. Cite evidence, details, and explain them. If you're using the yes ma'am formula, me and my thinking, I think she's mad. How do I know? Because the author gave me these clues. And here's my connection, explanation. Everything you need to write a well-written constructive response lives on the silhouette. That thing's magic. 5 steps plus the silhouette. You are explicitly, concretely, and visibly breaking down how to make an inference and write a constructed response. All right. I'm ready to take a peek at questions and comments. So I'm going to open up our questions box here and see what we have. All right. Where is the silhouette? That's awesome. What does the silhouette organizer look like? Okay, so the silhouette itself, again, is Rosalinder's baby, and it comes out of that blue ChartSense book. And I contacted Roz, probably 2 years ago now, and said, Roz, I love this thing. May I use this? May I reference this? May I use that image? I'll keep your name on it. She said yes, graciously. And so that silhouette is on our website. You'll find it in the Idea Library. If you just type in 5 steps inference or inference 5 steps, it'll take you to an article and you can access her silhouette there. But that, I want you to consider printing that off 30 times on cardstock and laminating it. Because now in class discussions, when I ask a question, it's really rhetorical. We've read this, I've asked a question, and I'm really looking for the answer. I want the kids to stop, think, make a list of the details, ponder them, put them together, talk with their friend, come up with an answer, and then try to answer my question, and they can cite evidence to do it. Wipe the board, let's do another one, let's do another one, let's do another one, because if you can't voice an inference and an oral constructive response, you definitely can't write one. And so this thing's awesome. Primary, or when you're first teaching this whole class, put on anchor chart paper, a giant silhouette, project it on your smartboard. Do this whole class for a little while. This is huge. This is huge. All right, taking a peek at our clock. I have time for one more question. Let me see what we've got here. Okay, this is a good one. Our school uses formulas, but we're using different formulas. Okay, you guys, the power in a formula is consistency. We're only messing with the children here when we keep switching the formula. They use RAP, they use ACE, they use RACE, they use MAM. Everybody's got their little pet acronym here. Hey, come up with something together. Get in agreement on, hey, we've all been wanting the same thing. We've just been using a different letter for it, but we all want the same thing. Ask the students which they prefer. That's who this is for. It's not our favorite. It's the one that makes the most sense to them. Because the power in formulaic writing is consistency. But if every year the formula changes, we're not helping the kids. Great question. Great comment. Okay, I'm ready to move us on. We're ready for our third power strategy. Executing the research writing task. All right, these new assessments have this expectation that the kids will have to write a longer, extended reading response to a writing prompt, but it's rooted in reading. And they're gonna have to read several passages and then write a research response. And this is kind of freaking some of us out. And I understand why, if your only definition of research writing is what it was when we went to school. If your only definition of research writing is the traditional research writing unit, you know, the mother load 6-9-week unit that we did. We all did this famous Hoosier report. We all did this giant something on an issue or a concept or something. All right, let's reflect on what we know, and then I want to compare it to what they have to do on an assessment, okay? In our classrooms, a traditional research unit includes spending time just exploring topics. What do you want to do your research paper on? What do you want to know more about? Let's get to know some topics. Well, that takes days. And then they take even more time to find sources. They're clicking all over the internet and they're checking out books and they're looking and watching videos because they're looking for sources that are CAR. Credible, accurate, and relevant, right? Because that's part of teaching is research writing, is that they can find their own sources and they know a reliable source, a relevant source, an accurate source. Oh, yes. And then finding the sources and clicking around the internet, that's days, that's weeks in our classroom units. Then we're collecting these sources, multiple, right? You don't write a research paper from one source. So they're collecting all these sources. Some are videos, some are longer, some are shorter, some are print text, some are digital, whatever. Okay, finally, we're done with the media center time where we're finding our sources and we can start really getting our notes together. You know, read through those and we make our note cards and our bib cards, or we're using Evernote or whatever, but we're reading, we're collecting, we're highlighting, and we're getting all of our details together. Then we finally think, okay, so how do I want to organize this? I got to kind of get this organized so I can pre-write. What's my big idea? What's my topic sense? My thesis statement? What's my controlling idea? Oh, okay, well, that's another couple days. And we finally write, all right? And the more sources we have, the longer it's going to be, right? And often we set how long. You must write a 5-page research paper. You must have a 10-page research paper. Well, in order to get that much bulk out of it, they're going to need to do a lot of reading, a lot of source finding, a lot of collecting, a lot of organizing to finally write the first draft. The weeks continue in this unit as we then meet and conference and revise and edit. And we're all happy when the research writing unit is over. There is nothing wrong with that. In fact, in a little bit, I'm going to show you in the standards, you're supposed to do that. We're supposed to teach kids how to do this. But when the standardized assessment provides kids a research writing task, it takes kind of the core of that and presents it and asks them to do it all in one sitting. In a simulated research writing task, the kids are not going to pick a topic, so they don't need to explore topics and get to know them. They're going to be given a prompt. They're not going to be jumping around on the internet looking for sources. They're going to be provided the sources. And because this is shorter, they're not going to be given as many sources. You see, this is why it's simulated research. It's not the traditional research. Go out, be a researcher, explore. There is research writing facets, but it's not in these first two steps. No, they're going to be given a prompt and they're going to be given the sources, fewer sources, because they only have so much time. They're going to be expected to read those sources and collect it for the information that the prompt requested. They already know the task. They don't come up with the task. They don't come up with the thesis statement. They just have to read and collect the information to help them answer that question, to write that research response. They've got to get all that information organized, get it synthesized, get their pre-write ready to go, and bam, crank out that first draft. Now all that, they got to do all that in one sitting. They've got to read and collect, they've got to synthesize and organize, and they've got to write the first draft all in one sitting. That's still scary. I don't disagree. But that's why it's called a simulated research writing task, because that's the part they do. Those are the only parts they do. There is no opportunity for revision. There's no time, there's no space for, oh, they're going to reread what they wrote, make minor changes in words and put a period where they forgot it. But we're not doing major revision, not like we do in the traditional writing unit. No, this is a simulated research task. It takes less time than the mother lode we may be used to. A quick review: research writing units versus simulated research writing tasks. Let me say that again. Units versus tasks. Quick one-sitting prompts. When we compare these two, units take days and weeks. That big traditional something, it's long because the research writing task is started and finished in one sitting. You are finding your own sources versus being provided the sources. It's going to be a long product versus a shorter product. You usually take the traditional writing of a research paper through the whole writing process, which again is why we lose a lot of time. Revision, editing, conferring. It's going to be a strong first draft only. That's it. And here it is. This is not teaching to the test, folks. This is the test assessing the standards our kids should have mastered, because it's in the standards. Yes, if you're using the Common Core, and then it says that our kids should conduct short as well as long sustained research projects. If you're from Indiana, our numbers are a little different and our wording's a little different, but it expects them to have big writing process tasks and short research tasks. That's the standards. And because of the parameters of a test, of an assessment, they're going to give the kids the short experience, assuming we've been giving them the long one. and the short one all year long. Here's what we want to remember as we're looking through. It's about a balance. Yes, give them the sustained, give them the writing process, give them the mother-lode traditional writing unit. But man, we better be giving them simulated research writing tasks in class. And you know what I find? That these short things, I do way more often. Why? Because they're fast. They're faster. And they're only going to produce 1 page as opposed to 10 pages. And I'm going to give them the sources, and I'm going to give them the prompt. And it's going to be based on the science and social studies concepts we're learning. We've got to make sure that we're doing the long sustained and the short. It's the combination. The standards expect it. On the standards, they're going to give them the short version, the task, the simulated task. Folks, this isn't just in the standards. This is real world. We do this all the time. Again, we don't think, oh, what topics do I want to explore? No, we're out and about in our real life, and someone says something, hey, did you hear about? And I'm like, yeah, I just read an article on that. And then we start talking, and then all of a sudden, a couple more things on my phone and on my computer and in the grocery store line. I see it in the magazines, and I see it on CNN, on TV, and I am putting together lots of information from lots of sources all on this one topic. Now, I'm not going to write a first draft in my real world life about this, but I am reading and collecting information. I'm synthesizing, it's shaping how I'm thinking, and it does impact my conversations. When I talk to people, yeah, I read such and such, and I'm giving evidence, and well, I really think that, and here's why I think that, and these kinds of things go together a little bit. When we're asking kids to do this on the test, this is real world. Totally real world. All right, so now when we're considering how this looks on a test, and with our waning 10, 12 minutes here, I want to kind of give you the big picture. How does this work? How can I help my kids get here? I mean, Christina, I can structure assignments that are big and long, and I can structure short assignments. But just giving kids more passages, more prompts, and more research writing tasks is not going to improve their writing. How do you help them read and collect the information, synthesize and organize, and write the first draft? Just do that. How do you teach that? How do you work on that? All right. First, we got to get them to learn how to read multiple sources and collect the information from multiple sources that we give them. And I think to help you with this, a simple chart. You don't need to give them a black line master. Just teach them how to make a chart with some rows. You need a row for every source that they're going to have. I can read these sources over days with the kids. I mean, eventually, I want them to have to read them all in one sitting. But when I'm first learning how to just read and collect information, read this on Monday, and this is on Tuesday, and these 2 are on Wednesday, and on Thursday, I then say, all right, let's start. Let's go back to our text, our sources here. And my question is, and whatever the question is, the bigger prompt you want them to respond to, and show them how to just label the left skinny column, source 1, 2, 3, 4, or, article, essay, video, photos, whatever. You can do it by title, whatever, but we got to keep it organized. They've got to collect the information organized by sources. That's part of what makes this research writing, is that it's multiple sources and they have to attribute their sources. So we read and we're getting ready to collect information. We've yet to collect anything. All we've done is read, and now I'm getting ready. Okay, so based on whatever the prompt is, the question I'm asking, then I'm going, let's say we're going to read all of these different passages here about astronauts, okay? We're going to read a day in the life of an astronaut and preparing to be an astronaut, and when you're gone on a long trip, and what it's like in the capsule or the rocket or the whatever they're in. Okay, so we're reading all about astronauts right now. And the question is, pretend that you are going to write a report. You're going to write a report on careers, and your career is the life of an astronaut, what it's like to be an astronaut. And so that's what I'm going to do my long research writing task on. Whoa. That's way over here, first draft. We are so not ready to write that. We got to collect the information from our sources. I've read the sources. Now I got to collect my information. Okay, so what about being an astronaut? Well, I picked up this and I picked up this and I learned this. In this first source, I got this information. In the second source, I learned these things. They might help me. Remember, green details, those are, list the details that might be helpful. This might help, I might use this. This kind of goes with it. This kind of answers that question. And so I'm making a list of details for each of the sources. See how they're organized? Do you see how I'm going to be able to attribute what details came from what source? Yeah, because it's organized. All right, so now I've read, I've collected. Now I need to get myself ready here. I need to synthesize and pre-write. I need to get myself organized. Okay, now what I'm about to show you is what we do not want kids to do, but it's what most kids do. They look back at their notes and they say, all right, career as an astronaut. Well, you need to do this and you need to do this. And it has this and it includes this and all it is a hodgepodge of all these miscellaneous details in a laundry list of facts. Wait a minute. They did not just do what they're wanting the kids to do. They're asking them to synthesize, to go beyond the text. We did not go beyond the text. All we did was summarize. All we did was regurgitate. We just retold the details. We just listed them. We just collected the details and fleshed them out into sentences. That's it. This is not complex thinking. This is depth of knowledge level 1. This is just regurgitation. No. They're supposed to synthesize. Oh my goodness. What is that? All right, so we're doing this whole astronaut thing, okay? We've read these passages. We've collected these details. So now I need to write a research response, a newspaper article, a report, whatever they ask me, using this information that I've synthesized. How do you do this? You look across these details and you have to think, well, I learned this and I learned this and I learned this and I learned that. And that makes me think that an astronaut needs to be highly educated. Have you seen the silhouette? When they say synthesize, they mean make an inference. Synthesis is just a type of inference. You do that again. They have to look across the details and start to put them together. Well, this and this and this. I'm thinking that they're kind of like, and that makes me think, a career as an astronaut means you better be highly educated or you're going to have to go through a lot of schooling. And then I look back at the remaining details and I think, well, this and this and this. Well, when I put those together, they're kind of implying that, you've got to be super courageous. Do you see how it's in orange? Because it's an inference. Because nowhere in any of these articles did it say, to have a career as an astronaut, you need to be courageous. You need to be highly educated. I am bringing myself, my thinking as a reader to this. Long extended responses expect multiple inferences, not just one, not just two. This plus this plus this makes me think that to be an astronaut, your career is going to take you away from your family a lot. Again, it didn't say that. The green are the literal details from the text. I'm putting them together. What does that mean? Well, here is my inference. I just did it. Are you seeing how if you can't do a constructed response, you can't do an extended response? Are you seeing what I mean by synthesize? Okay, so now we need to do the pre-write. Well, you kind of just did. Yeah, we kind of just synthesized and organized because each of these bad boys, those silhouettes, that inference I made, oh yeah, that's going to be a paragraph. Me and my thinking, author details. Let me explain what I mean. Let me give you another one. Me and my thinking, author details. Let me explain. And here's my next one. Bam, bam, bam. You know what you're doing now? Now you are balancing orange and green. Remember the balance of elaboration, me and my thinking, that's what's orange. With the green, author details. Again, this could be race instead of ma'am. It's the same thing. I need to have the inference. I need to have the details. I need to have the explanation. And it just continues on. Okay, now this is synthesizing. These orange inferences, this is the reader bringing new information. The prompts don't say, you are going to use the details to write a report on what it would be like to have a career as an astronaut. Be sure to have a paragraph about how they're highly educated. Have a second paragraph about how they need to be courageous, and have a third paragraph about how it's a very isolated career. No, it's not that easy. That's the whole idea of a synthesis. The kids have to look at the details, put them together, and come up with the main ideas. Come up with the reasons. Let's back up. These might be reason one, infer a reason to support a persuasive or argumentative. Infer another reason. The reasons aren't in the passages. The kids have to collect the details, put them together and think, here's a reason. If you're just regurgitating the facts that came out of the text, all you're doing is summarizing. You are not synthesizing. We need them to use the details, evidence, and bring the elaboration with it. That is what they're expecting. All right, it's a biggie. Research writing tasks are big. Let's pause for a minute, take a peek here at our questions and see what we're looking at. Okay, what are the research writing tasks looking for? What about the rubrics? This one happens to be a particular question to the iLearn rubric. Okay. I think the biggest thing to know, I'm going to actually take you back a slide here. I think the biggest thing to know is that on those rubrics, we need to understand that their explanation, what they're typing, what they're writing, has to be both what I'm saying, what I'm thinking, what I'm learning, what I'm inferring with support. I think that's the biggest thing. I love them. I love all of these power strategies. Forget the test. I love what we're asking kids to do. We are improving their thinking. This is awesome. Getting kids to do this is more than college ready. This is more than career ready. This is life ready. This is absolutely awesome. But as we wrap all this up, I want you to recognize that you have to be able to make an inference first. Forget writing a constructive response. Forget the extended response. If they can't look at the text and think beyond, this plus this makes me think and make an inference, we can't move on. Once they can make an inference, orally explain their thinking with details, then can you put it in writing? Because our kids are assessed in reading through their writing. And if they can write a short response, then it's time to open up the door to the long extended response. Whoa, whoa, whoa. If they can't write a short, they can't write a long. The order of these power strategies is intentional. Let's be conscious of the scaffold that we expect out of our kids.